Today I'm at the famous Castle Rising in Norfolk, situated about 4 miles northeast of the port town of King's Lynn.
It is one of the best surviving Norman castles in England, and it actually resembles the main keep at Falaise Castle, the birthplace and home of William the Conqueror in Normandy, France. And some of the stone for its construction was even shipped over from Caen in Normandy, also used to build the famous Ardennes Abbey that I covered last year. Castle Rising's name is of Norman and Anglo-Saxon origin, meaning a castle close to a settlement of Rhesa's people. It sits just to the south of the river Babingley, which gets its name from a lost village that used to sit on its banks, with the only evidence being a ruined 14th century Gothic style church, the first Christian church to be built in Norfolk.
The castle and earthworks covers around 13 acres, and its construction was first started in 1138 by one of the most powerful noblemen in the country at the time, William d'Albini. His father had actually been gifted the land during the reign of William II. Prior to this, the area belonged to William the Conqueror's half-brother Odo, that I've also covered. The d'Albini family would die out in 1243. Another powerful Norman family, the Montalts, would take ownership, also dying out in 1331. It would then be passed on to the most famous of its owners, Queen Isabella, the she-wolf of France. She is long believed to have murdered her husband, King Edward II, who she had overthrown by force not long before. Castle Rising would remain her home until her death in 1358, and during this time her son King Edward III and her grandson the Black Prince would visit many times, hunting in the vast deer parks that once surrounded the castle.
The castle comprises of three baileys, two small outer baileys to the east and west, and a much larger inner bailey in the centre that is accessed via the eastern bailey and barbican, then a stone bridge that gives access to the original gatehouse. The banks surrounding the castle reach up to 18 metres in height. They were originally only around half this size. The parts of the wall that still survive on top of the bank are from the 14th century. Although the smaller bailey's contents have long since disappeared, the inner bailey does still boast some impressive structures. To the northern side is the foundations of an 11th century Norman church. No other churches from this time have been discovered, making it not only the oldest church in Rising, but it predates the castle itself, and is likely the reason the site was chosen, and thus encircling the church within its walls, as there appears to be no other strategic importance to the site. To the southern side of the bailey is a small collection of residential and service buildings from the time of Queen Isabella, with some other later foundations. By far the most impressive is the keep, its walls standing 15 metres tall and an overall footprint of 24 by 21 metres. It has been described as a fortress palace. Some historians have even debated its military potential, citing such things as the windows being too large or the fact it is overlooked by higher ground. But do not overlook the fact that there was a well placed within its walls, its purpose being to provide a water source during a siege, or the many arrow slits cut into the walls. And even though it was primarily used as a base for hunting, it was built as a castle, not simply a house. Seemingly, its only actual military use was when its garrison was mobilised during the Wars of the Roses. Built from a mixture of local carstone, Lincolnshire and Caen limestone in a Romanesque and later Gothic style, to a level of stonemasonry usually reserved for cathedrals, with the only exception being the top third of the keep that is of lesser quality, built at a later date. It is an early, longer form of Norman keep known as a hall keep, and as I mentioned before, it is one of the finest remaining examples. Scattered around in its construction are even some repurposed Roman tiles from an unknown site.
Surveys in 1482, 1503 and 1542 repeatedly describe the keep in a state of disrepair. Such remarks as evil repaired or great ruin and decay were used. Roofs and even the timber floors had collapsed, and rather than repair them due to the excessive cost, they were bypassed. By the middle of the 16th century it became derelict, and by the 17th century even the lands surrounding the castle lost their park status. In 1544 King Henry VIII granted it to the Howard family, who own it to this day. An interesting fact is that in 1900 the castle was open to the public and managed by a caretaker who used to live inside the keep in the only section to have a roof and windows.